Beau Maxwell, better known as Beau. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Please say where in the world you're from. Please put questions in. We will relay them to us, or more properly to Beau. And basically today we want to talk about, something. I come from the Buddhist tradition. How do we listen to ourselves? How do we connect with who we are, our fundamental voice? So I love that you kind of distinguish between intuition and imagination. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do we know if we're listening to ourselves fully?
That's the best question to kick it off with, because that's hard. I think 95% of the people that I've worked with over the years, that's been the kicker. And it's a practice, whichever practice you find that can incorporate both imagination and intuition. It's a matter of getting the feel. Imagination feels like a push, where intuition feels like a pull. Like things are happening and they're unfolding in ways that you didn't expect, and they're popping up and showing up and many times not making sense, actually. Our imagination, we can make sense. Intuition.
So the way you're defining it, imagination is a positive as well.
Oh,
it's not that it's fake. It's not that it's a distraction. So in Buddhism, we talk about, monkey mind. Like we try to be present with our stories about how I'm right and the world is wrong, and our busyness, our speediness. And then as we connect with our breath over time and in community, we can kind of be present with, I think, something like our intuition, our basic goodness. Mm-hmm. Does that relate at all to what you're teaching people and guiding people into?
Absolutely. Imagination can be a doorway for intuition. And there's a lot of traditions that use it that way. That is absolutely wonderful. Allowing yourself to go on an imaginary journey, taking it from the monkey mind to that one walk on the beach, walk through a field, and then consciously saying, okay, I allow my intuition to speak, and then allowing things to come in. So it can be very much a natural flow. I mean, imagination is what we use with affirmations, manifestation, things like that. So imagination is a very positive, powerful tool that can step you into intuition.
And they show that with craft or with sports, with really anything, using imagination to go through what will happen and kind of practicing so that you're more awake and aware. It's not putting your veil of your kind of discursive thoughts over everything. You're actually using imagination to make yourself more present.
Exactly. The struggle people have with intuition is that it's a very subtle difference between imagination and intuition. And it's a subtle pull and a subtle push. And so that's the thing that takes practice.
So if I could give you an example and get some free consultation from the expert behind Sage Method. So I went to, and maybe you can tell me if this is BS or intuition. So we've had toxic smoke like you in Oregon for most of the summer. Boulder, where I live, has become more and more yuppie, very rich. A lot of the tech money has moved here. It's no longer the kind of eco, hippie, fun place it's been. It's still a wonderful community, but it's a lot of the weirdos in a good way have had to move out. So I've been dreaming kind of nonstop. It's weird. I can't seem to turn it off. And I meditate regularly about where I used to live, Vermont. I went to high school there and for years. And I've been thinking about moving there and contributing to community. And, I have roots there. And so that's imagination. I'm constantly visualizing this little town where I used to live in, and maybe opening up a cafe for the community. But is that just when we're in a relationship, we dream of a better relationship? Is that kind of BS, or is that a positive imagination that is in some way related to some deep-seated intuition that maybe it's time for me to move into a different area? And I'm asking this not just for myself, but we all have these kind of dreams or imaginations come up.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about positive imagination, visualization, just like you said with, sports, et cetera, walking it through it. You're bringing the creation into your energetic space.
Right.
And what's in your energetic space is what the universe listens to. It's kind of how it flows. So in essence, you're being an active participant in the creation of your existence. Now, if you were to be randomly doing an errand, doing the dishes, something like that, and something popped in about Vermont that you didn't expect to pop in or didn't understand, which happens quite frequently for people when they first start using their intuition, that would be intuition. So it's more like an outside source saying something to you and versus you creating it. But you're creating that ground, that starting place of exploration for Vermont. And that does open up intuition.
So I'm asking you these questions because you're an expert in this field. You have a school called the SAGE method. What does SAGE stand for?
SAGE is spirituality, alignment, growth, and empowerment.
And those are all great words, but when we go into the SAGE method, are we doing those 4 steps sequentially, or they all kind of unfold at the same time, or?
They all kind of unfold at the same time. The course itself is a bit of a formula, and it's 7 weeks in length. So it's a matter of navigating through the course and finding all of those things within you. It's a very organic approach. It's not modeled off of one person or another person or how it goes. It's more about people going inward and finding out what's blocking their intuition versus just trying over and over and over.
Yeah, because we're really trained as a culture for some reason to almost ignore our intuition, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do we ignore?
Well, we don't really need it anymore. We order pizza. And, you show up at school as a kid and they give you the room you're supposed to be in, what time you're supposed to do. So we've been taught as humans throughout our lives that this is what we need to do. We don't really need to search. And so we get into that human condition and that human routine, and we don't rely on our intuition through. Not everybody. Some people are really lucky. Some people are really lucky to have those parents that are like, well, but I'm talking about the majority of us. Who, we're just not used to using it.
Right, because we're under pressure from our parents or our teachers or society to accomplish certain things seen as good, to be on a certain track. I did have one of those weird hippie Buddhist parents who was like, well, what do you think, and encouraged me to kind of follow that. But, we've all had moments of regret in our past, which I think is really good to reflect on, healthy to reflect on, where we've ignored our intuition for a long time. And then we've kind of paid the price or we've realized that later. We've also all had moments in the past where we listened to our intuition for whatever reason, we connected with it. And it's kind of interesting that when you listen to your intuition, something kind of good seems to happen. It's never like you listen to your intuition and it's an awful idea.
Yeah, when because I was not raised by the parents that were open to all that. So I definitely come from a really skeptic background, which actually makes the whole process quite fascinating.
I kind of love that. I mean, a skeptical, intuitive, those seem contradictory and very healthy to have both in a way.
Oh, yeah. And I've remained very balanced. So for me, any new concepts that come up, I'm always open. But I do kind of keep that skeptical place. And about 15 years ago is when I opened up, and a very short, fun story to express when we're using our intuition in our day-to-day. And I'm not talking about readings or being a professional. I'm talking about just using it in your day-to-day. Everything gets a little easier. You're still going to have some situations that come up, but because you're allowing your intuition to come through, it gets a little easier. So I had this beater Saab, loved this car. It was like from 1978 Saab or something.
So cool.
Oh, I loved it. I even put carpet on the ceiling. It was great. And the thing never broke down. Had it for a year, never broke down. And I sunk into that belief that this thing was a tank. It was never going to break down. And I was driving down the road and that voice bubbled up and it said the car is going to break down, which contradicted my belief because I had this belief in my car. Yeah. And I looked out the window and there was a shop and I said, well, I'm supposed to be listening to my intuition. I'm learning how to do this 15 years ago. Pulled into the shop, parked in the parking lot of the mechanic, and the car died in the spot. Yeah, brought it in. Well, they brought it in because it was dead. It was a small little part. Wow. I fixed it in 15 minutes and I went on my way. So our life is still going to happen.
So you had a moment there where you're like,
whoa, yeah, parked and went, okay, there's something to this. But I didn't have to have a tow truck. I didn't have to have people pull me out. You know what I mean? Didn't
ruin your day.
It didn't ruin my day.
Yeah. In Buddhism, we talk about the same thing. Auspicious coincidence is how we talk about it. So if you're present, if you're relating with your life fully and properly, little weird auspicious coincidences will happen all the time that really couldn't happen logically or statistically. And it's not woo-woo. So tell me about the not woo-woo thing. You have a quote where it's like, it's not all about unicorns. And, I think when a lot of us, just to be skeptical, hear medium or psychic, we're like, okay, where's the crystal ball and
Oh, I forgot my turban.
Yeah.
Sorry. And the ball and the glitter and yeah.
You're reminding me I have to watch Big again. But so how is this stuff actually grounded and real when we travel the path in the Sage method, which and we're working together to offer. So you're offering it until 11/11, good date. That's November 11th, right?
Yep.
For 90% off, which seems like quite an offer. And so when we do that, is this actually a grounded thing or is it kind of woo-woo?
I tend to stay away from woo-woo.
Yeah.
For me, intuition it's our sixth sense. And that's how it's approached with the Sage method. It is already there. It's part of you. Everyone has it. There's no special gift over here or gift over here. It's a matter of this is one of your six senses you just haven't been using.
Right. And it's like a weak little muscle we haven't exercised.
Yep. It's just a weak little muscle. And the two big components of the course is that. And the other large piece of it is it's just covered up with clutter, emotional, physical, mental clutter. And so when you can identify what's blocking it and then release it, which is part of the course, that's when
I love that.
One sense starts to open up again so you can use it.
And we can see that in our everyday life. That's like the least woo-woo thing ever. If I'm in a meeting, which I just was a couple hours ago, and I have some thoughts in my head and I'm writing something down and I'm distracted and I'm doing things because of those thoughts, I'm not present at all for the conversation that's happening. So if your mind is full of this clutter, you can't actually hear your intuition. And in fact, your intuition might just be one out of 100 voices. One voice could be saying, I want pizza. One voice could be saying, oh, I need to email this person. Another voice could be saying, I'm late for lunch. Another, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. Exactly. Every to-do you have, every leftover issue with relationships, with your environment, every piece of clutter, whether it be mental, physical, emotional, is all like, each of them is a hamster on a hamster wheel in your brain. Kind of like the monkey mind theory. And then we say, hey, how many of those are in your brain? And now you're asking for intuition to flow through it. So it's a matter of organizing, becoming aware, finding your own authentic center instead of the center that you were told to have.
Right. So in the Sage method, how do we actually do that or practice that? Like if we were to sign up for the Sage method, and I know you also have a free course, the top 5 intuitive tools. So maybe that's a related question, but how do we actually accomplish that?
Well, it's definitely a formula. For me, when I first opened up, it was a struggle because I just went to a course here, a course there, talk to this person, talk to that person. And I tried what everyone was doing and it wasn't working for me. And it wasn't until I sat down and really went inward to find the formula. And over the course of the 7 weeks, the tools invite you to figure out who you are instead of, the programming, et cetera, et cetera. The course does not ask people to completely upheave their life and change everything. It's really fascinating. Part of this declutter comes from just starting the process of moving forward. It's all you have to do is start. So the course starts by helping you to find, the clutter that's blocking you. Then to learn the structure of intuition, how it works, how do mediums get information, how do psychics get information, how does all of this connect? And then at the end, the last couple of weeks is all about guide connection. And there's some really fun experiments in there that people can do to see where their strengths fall with psychic or medium.
Thank you. So I really want to encourage people to ask questions. We have, I think, 3 questions in. We will have a question round. Before we get there, you mentioned that story was 15 years ago with the car. You've been actually doing this, teaching in person for many years, which I really like that because we have an online learning. We did it with actual human beings in person for many years first, the training. So it's not a Johnny come lately like Zoom economy kind of moment, although we can do it from anywhere while wearing our boxers or whatever, which is cool. But you've been kind of refining this over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first students were back in 2007, I believe. And I've been teaching. So I've watched thousands come through the course, which has been really fun.
Yeah.
It's been really fun to watch people come in, start the first week, go through that process and then come out the other end of it. It is
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fun to see people travel. We have a different path, but it's so fun to see people connect in community and travel, some sort of meaningful path. You have the Sage Circle, which is your online community where people can share their experiences and help one another out. And you do some live teachings. What do you call them?
I do sacred space sessions. They're meditation sessions that happen a couple times a month. And that community was built. There was really 2 things. When I opened up, I knew no one. I remember I knew one Tai Chi instructor and I went to him and said, okay, you're the only one I know. Because I was in such a professional corporate skeptic math. I mean, I have a degree in mathematics. Like that's where I came from. And so the 2 things that were most important to me was being able to lay out a path that people could walk to actually access their intuition, which is the Sage method. And then the other thing that was really big to my heart, because I didn't have it in the beginning either, is to give people a place to connect. Not everybody has somebody that they can talk to or share their experiences with, especially when you get into the weirder experiences.
Right. So for those, we're putting the links in the sidebar so people can join the top 5 intuitive tools. That's free. Jump into the Sage Circle community or do the full program, the Sage Method, which is, again, 90% off until 11/11, November 11th. So normally it's $1,400. Now it's $149. That seems like quite a discount.
It was a little stunning when I did it. And to charge that much for so many years and then have 2020 hit, I don't feel like I need to say much more than that other than the word 2020. A couple people came on my team really quickly because it was me only when I launched that, but now we have a team of 4. We've got 2 on the West Coast, 1 on the East Coast, somebody in Australia, and so the team came together to make sure that as many people could take the course as needed. So, and people need it right now. There's a spiritual shift happening, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's quite a time.
Yeah.
So we have some great questions. Do you mind a couple questions?
Love it.
All right. So one from Diane, who's the first one in with a question. So we'll go to Diane. Is there a difference between this sort of basic or inherent fundamental gut feeling and intuition when you talk about intuition?
So our gut feeling is intuition. Absolutely is. The cool part is that that's one way that intuition can express itself. So a lot of students will come into the course with, they just know. That's the sentence. I just know. This just comes through and I just know. And then the course helps them to start using their other 5 senses to be able to develop that know into visuals, auditory, things like that. So it's a matter of helping them to use more of their senses through their intuition.
Are you ever in a situation where you feel like someone's intuition or gut feeling is wrong, like that they're saying this is my intuition, but really they're placing attention on something that maybe isn't their intuition? It's more like a fantasy or something.
Yeah. It does happen a bit.
Yeah, that must be hard. Because how do you say to someone, you're trying to encourage them to listen to themselves, and then they're like, you know what? I'm going to leave my partner of 32 years because stuff is boring. They're a nice person, but I'm bored. I want to move to Fiji. And that could be intuition, but that also could be like, seventh, what is it called? The 7-year itch. There could be this sort of boredom. Like, how do we know if it's like fantasy or boredom and not intuition?
Pretty simple. How much of your intent is in there? How much do you want? Even the best professional intuitives that have been working for years and years will tell you it is hard sometimes to get information about yourself, especially if you have intent. Even myself, if I wanted a new, car, and I stood in the lot of the car and said, oh, what does my intuition say? It'd probably say yes. I got to tell you, it'd be like, yeah, it's a great idea. So
Maserati.
My intuition told me so. No, it's one of those things. You really have to be able to put your intent aside before allowing that intuition to flow, to get the right information to come through purely.
I love that. So it's not just desire.
No. Yeah, desire gets in the way. Desire is part of the clutter.
Right. Oh, I love that. Because I was thinking also, like, I'm sure we're all like this, but if I'm like have a boring night and I'm watching a movie or something, around 11 p.m. I start being like, maybe I'll eat an entire huge bowl of like have a third dinner basically, because I often eat like 2 rounds anyway. And that's never like a great idea. I feel awful when I do it, but I can totally, it's like a idea that comes up out of one of my guts anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple more questions. So let's see. I love this one. It's someone's thinking about other people. Leslie, how can we help others change their intuition, or can we?
Change their intuition, or to open their intuition?
Yeah, like access their intuition maybe.
Yeah. It's a matter of sticking back to the formula kind of concept. You got to start with what's blocking you. I mean, think about kids. They're really intuitive. I've come across some really amazing kids, but kids are naturally intuitive. We come into this world, all 6 senses open, and then we get into our routine. Okay. And we just start to clutter. So the best way to help somebody access their intuition would be to help them get a perspective on what their clutter is, what might be blocking them, et cetera, et cetera. So. Yeah.
And I know we often like give kids compliments in that way, but kids are also the first ones to be like, I want more candy. It's bedtime. I want ice cream or I'm going to cry. So like we train children from a very young age to be quiet, give them some sweets, like this is what you want, but that may not be their intuition even.
Yeah, that's definitely the training. So part of this is deciphering what's training and what's authentic, like what's spirit-led, soul-led, intuitive-led versus what we've been trained to do.
Do you feel like this is probably a ridiculous question? I think this may be a question no one's ever asked you, but I'm probably wrong. Do you feel like you talked about 2020, so the whole world and the US, particularly right now perhaps, but the whole world is going through some craziness, times of upheaval, the smoke, the fires, like climate change. Climate change reminds me a little bit of sort of intuition, like we kind of know it's like maybe we should relate to it, but we ignore it for a million years because it's kind of boring and hard work. Mm-hmm. Do you think, not specifically about climate change, but do you think as a nation, as a world, we need to reaccess our intuition as a society and relate with some things that, the earth is trying to tell us?
Big time. Big time. It's not a coincidence that in 2020 through this, it's now difficult to get outdoor equipment and bikes and because that's what people did. They went out. Mm-hmm. They went out into nature. So part of this is Mother Nature calling people back out. Mm-hmm. And because for a lot of places, that's all you can do. There's, I'm still in a place where there's no movie theaters. So it's not like everyone can go indoors all the time. So part of this is inviting us to come back out. Yeah. And part of this is inviting us to listen to ourselves because we're in this place where now we have to sit still. Mm-hmm. And that was a big reason why I made the discount happen, because I knew people, they're home, they're having to sit still, and these tools could really help, because I knew how many people are going to be going inward, and to have some sort of direction is a beautiful thing. But yeah, this is inviting us to kind of get back in touch with who we really are.
How are do men and women have equal intuition? Are we trained differently? I feel like men are often trained not to listen to our intuition and to kind of be very logical or rigid or aggressive. In fact, we love telling everyone to shut up. Do you feel like, what's the relationship of gender to intuition or lack of intuition?
I really don't see a difference in just, it would be the same question as, do men or women taste differently or see differently or hear differently? Right. So I really don't see the intuition itself being different, but the approach to it is. Yeah. The approach to it is. So,
and that can be different for everybody. Obviously, we all have different relationships with our gender, exactly. But there is a training in our society to ignore certain things. Like when I was a kid, my favorite color was kind of this pink that I saw in the sunsets, and my first grade teacher was like, "Oh yeah, you're a boy, you can't like pink," So there's definitely a societal training.
When it comes to watching people go through the course, I'd actually step a little bit back from the male female and step further into the personality. So intuition is unique for each person. Each and every person, their intuition flows differently, and it's based on their personality and their wiring and kind of their MO. So for some people, the very first things that they get when they sit to meditate, those are spot on 100%. There's other people that they have to sit with it for a little bit. Right. And settle into it. And then their intuition and accuracy is high. So that's a big part of the course too, is don't do it like any other person does it. Learn what it is, understand how it functions within you, and then use it how it speaks to you. So I'd pull it a little bit more into personality.
I like that. Yeah. And again, if you said, knowing what intuition is, if I'm saying this is intuition, my desire for a second pint of Ben & Jerry's at night, that could be confused. You could actually go the wrong direction. You're like, I just follow what I want to do.
Yeah. Intuition is tricky because you have to let go. You have to get out of your own way in order for it to actually show up.
You have to open up.
You have to open up, release the outcome, let go of your intent. You have to be standing in front of that freezer in your kitchen saying, it doesn't matter to me if I eat that ice cream or not, in order for your intuition to tell you if you should or not.
Yeah, then you can hear it. Then you can listen. But if you're just going with that craving.
If you want your intuition to tell you what you want to hear, it's not intuition.
Right. That's helpful. So check out the Sage method. It's 90% off, which I don't think has happened before until 11/11. That link is in the sidebar. What's the website? If people are hearing this and they're not seeing the comments, it's sagecommunity.com.
TheSageMethod.com is the parent site. Yep.
Okay. TheSageMethod.com.
Yep. Everything is on there.
And is the discount offer there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Because some of the Facebook people won't be seeing the same comments, I think. And then again, the top 5 intuitive tools. Is there there's a lot more questions if we want to. Do you incorporate chakras in your courses? I love that. From Janice.
There is a part of the course where it invites you to incorporate that. The course is non-denominational. It doesn't go down one line or anything like that. It's very how it works, what's going on, and then each student is invited to really fit it to what speaks to them. We have people of all across the globe. We have people of all different religions and paths. Our big thing is we're all climbing a mountain. We just might not all be climbing the same path, but we're all still climbing the mountain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for some people, chakras is a very important part, and the course does invite them to go ahead and use that balancing.
And, the mountain path I might be on is more skeptical, like wanting to keep it simple. Like, how do I get through the clutter of my mind and actually listen? And how do I identify my intuition
Exactly.
versus my ego's desire, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
As soon as we can get away from the naming of all these paths and just see it as your organic path of development as just for your soul, that's usually the best place to be.
Oh, that sounds good. Let's do one more question. I think the answer is going to be yes to that one. This is a cool question from Danielle. So what next? When you connect with your intuition, you have identified it, you've had it confirmed through the Sage Circle or through your teachings, and you feel like, okay, I get it. I know how to use this once weak muscle. What next? Once you kind of know who you are, what next? Are you done?
That's it. I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, we have, I would say about 10% of the people that go through the Sage method continue on to become professionals, whether that's a life coach, doula, intuitive, etc. But for the other 90%, it's a matter of being able to incorporate it into their day-to-day life. And that's really important. When people come out of the course, they're stronger with decision-making, boundary setting, putting themselves first in those moments that they should, carve out that hour to meditate. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Instead of taking care of everyone. So some of that balance is going to come in, and then continuing to use the tools in the course throughout their life that work for them. I mean, you have a course that's full of tools. Not every tool is going to work for every single person, but you'll know when you go through it, you'll say, okay, this one works for me. I'm going to take time out for myself, or I'm going to, take on something I've always wanted to do, things like that. But you definitely, it's something that you can now use moving forward.
Oh, I love that. I feel like it could be very, I guess the E in Sage, very empowering for people who have been told to shut up or to walk down this path or kind of pushed around your whole life. And then here's a course that actually encourages you to listen to yourself and find your own wisdom.
Exactly. And we have people that go through the course that are able to reduce anxiety because of it. They're able to deepen their relationships because of it.
Or get out of abusive or unhealthy relationships too, because suddenly you're listening to yourself and you're not just being pushed around. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And there's something really deep that happens when you start to listen to yourself. You feel less alone. That's really powerful.
I love that.
Yeah. When you
There's something, say that again. There's something.
When you start to really listen to yourself, you're less alone. You start to realize that you're not isolated. You are connected and you are supported. Even if there's not another living person standing in front of you, you don't need that other living person in order to thrive. You can thrive and then connect with that living person. It's definitely a different shift, which would deepen the relationship. So
you're not codependent. You're not trying to get away from your loneliness. You can actually befriend your own self and not be truly alone. We say that in Buddhism, like Maitri is our word, or metta, where you're making friends with yourself, a self that often you've ignored or bullied or guilt tripped or whatever your whole life.
To hear people come out of it, like you had mentioned earlier, I've been teaching this for years, and to see people come out of it braver, stronger, more centered, letting go of codependency, letting go of those things that they were, holding on to, because, when we find ourselves, we like to spend time with ourselves. It's like alone kind of, shifts into a different definition.
Yeah, it's more of a privilege instead of like a lacking. I remember when I was a kid, like college age, I was like embarrassed to be alone, like embarrassed. Like if I had nothing to do and I was going to hang at home alone one night, I was like, would hide,
Yeah.
And now it's like being alone is so exciting.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I get to be alone and do exactly what I want to do.
And it's a beautiful thing, being able to be centered and enjoying who you are and your path, and then other things now are interacting with you as well. A lot of the tools are about going deeper, a lot of them, including in conversations and kind of stepping back from that surface mentality that we have, that we kind of lean into on a day-to-day basis. How are you? I'm fine. Well, go deeper, tell me what fine means today. So that living in that pattern is a lot more blissful.
Yeah, I like that. And a lot more sane. Like instead of following your fears and your cravings all over the globe through your whole short, beautiful, precious life, you can actually go the right direction for you.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, Beau, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That was super helpful. So just a final reminder, the Sage Method course, it's in the comments. And the website, if you're not seeing the comments, is thesagemethod.com.
Yep.
And until 11/11, November 11th, it's 90% off, which is kind of maybe a COVID special. And,
pretty much.
Crazy 2020 special. And top 5 intuitive tools is free. And that's also, you can find that on thesagemethod.com.
Yep, that's free. That's always free. The one tool that is the biggest tool for people is in that free course. And that's a game changer in itself.
And we have a link that's on Elephant, I think also, where Cara did your course. Cara's one of our editors and wrote up her experience a bit. Beau, thank you so much for your patience and for your wisdom and for your
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was fun. Anytime.
I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.